The Sandy and Toddcast is a Mindgarden Media podcast in association with
Screw You, Todd
Productions.
Broadcasting from two very different yet magical places not found on any map. Get ready to discuss the strange, weird, ghostly, crazy, spooky, and odd things that take place around us each and every day. All while having a little bit of fun. This is the Sandy and Toddcast.
Here we are, season 11, episode 2. Welcome to the Sandy and Toddcast. She is Sandy.
He is Todd.
And we're devoting this season to Ghost Hunting 101. Lots of topics to talk about. And we've got another good one today. We're going to be talking about different kinds of energy, different kinds of haunting, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I thought it would be really cool to maybe just devote a season to talking about some of our experiences, some of the evidence that we have gathered over the years, what our personal beliefs are. And Todd, you know as well as I do that these are our personal beliefs. These are what is based on our personal experiences. And everybody has different experiences. No two experiences are exactly alike. And so a lot of people form their own opinions and thoughts and ideas based on their own personal experiences. And I think that's the way you should do it. I don't think that if one person tells you that it's A, B, C, and D, that if you don't experience it as A, B, C, and D, it's wrong or it never happened. Our beliefs are just that. It's what we believe based on the experiences that we have. And in the paranormal world, that's very important. So this will be a great season of sort of giving information, maybe getting you to ask your own questions and experience things for yourself.
And maybe share that experiences with us, like through messaging us on Facebook, or you can always send us an audio message as well to our personal Facebook pages or whatever, if you want to share a story. Always willing to listen to those.
Yeah, and if you have questions, we can give you some ideas, some advice, some of our thoughts on what happened or what you would like to happen or how you can make something happen. We've pretty much seen, a good amount of things, had a good amount of experiences. So we're very approachable. There's 1,000,001 ways to get in touch with us. And we would love to hear from you guys, whether it's comment, question, story. We'd love to hear from you guys. So this week, we are going to talk a little bit about types of hauntings, types of energies, and maybe some protection and how to protect yourself when you are going to do a paranormal investigation. You're going to put yourself in the realm of energies, be them living or not living, and how to have confidence in yourself and what you can do. So let's kick it off.
All right. I'm going to start off with a type of haunting that I think early on when I first got into it, I never really understood how something could just be residual. Because from a layman's terms, you think of a haunting as something that is there, that it's trying to communicate, or you're seeing it and it's right there, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, this just doesn't make sense to me, because I was thinking in old terms of ghosts and hauntings and what that all meant.
Right.
What we were kind of told as we grew up. Residual haunting really is, and they use this a lot, but it's kind of like a videotape or an audio tape playing over and over and over. That energy somehow is imprinted in that area, in that location, in that land, in that building, and it just kind of does its thing. And when I think about residual, for me, it reminds me a lot, and I always use this to kind of explain it to some people. It's like if you have carpeting in a room and you have your sofa here and your two chairs that sit there, whatever, you only walk in that one area of your room because there's other stuff there.
Right.
And over time, that carpeting gets worn down. So to me, residual energy is a lot like that. Something happened, someone lived there, an experience took place, that part of that was left behind. And that's what we're experiencing now. Just like if you look at that carpet, if you take all that stuff out of the room, you can see where it sat, you can see where people walked. That's what it reminds me of. Something happened here, and this is how we see that it has happened.
You know, that's a really great example. I never thought of it like that, a carpet. And I like that example. And one other really cool thing about residual energy that I've learned personally through investigating is that it can be two extremes. It can be the same thing happening over and over an extended period of time. So to your example, or I always use the example, the bartender who worked at a bar for 30 years, and every day he'd walk behind the bar, down the stairs, into the cooler, grab stuff, come back up, walk. And he did that every day. And then when he passes away or he moves on to another job, he may actually still be even living somewhere. But the energy that he expended over and over has soaked into his environment. And so patrons or workers in that bar, when it's quiet at night, may actually hear his footsteps going up and down the stairs, or they may hear the cooler door opening and closing. And the cooler door didn't really open and close, and there was nobody on the stairs. But that is an example that I like to use too, because that shows you how we're always expending energy. And why wouldn't it be absorbed somewhere? It goes somewhere. The other thing that I have learned too is that trauma can create residual energy. And sometimes that trauma only needs to happen one time, and that can create a stamp into that particular environment. Sometimes a car crash. Sometimes I've heard stories of people hearing what sounds like a car crash, and they go out on their front lawn, or they go wherever they are, and they're looking and there's nothing going on. But that type of energy can create that residual energy in that one place. And it might happen once in a lifetime again. It might happen once a day. You just don't know. And that throws people off too, because their thought process is, well, it should happen all the time. Sometimes it takes 10 years for something to happen.
And sometimes it takes a trigger to make it happen. So for instance, there's some beliefs that maybe if you get into an argument, right, that will trigger this, whatever it is, to happen again. Maybe just that particular day every year it takes place, or a specific time of the day. Right. And the other thing too is we talk about residual energy and how it's tied to a location. A lot has to do with what that building is made of, like the actual, what's in the ground, all that kind of stuff. So they always say if you have a lot of limestone or certain kind of rock under a building, maybe water running nearby, that feeds the energy. So there's so many things that fall into residual energy. I think to look at it as a simple form of haunting is an incorrect way to look at it.
I agree 100%. And also, one thing that I've learned too is that residual doesn't have to be a specific sound. It can be a feeling. So let me give an example. Probably 3 years ago, we were in a bar/restaurant that used to have a speakeasy in its basement area. And as soon as you walk into it, and it's all concrete, and the basement area, and it's got a few different hallways, and it's pretty large. But there was one room that you walk through the door and it immediately hit me. And I understand that I have some different abilities that I can detect this stuff a little bit easier, but it happened to everybody. When you walk through that portion of the basement, it's just heavy. And you almost feel a little bit lost. And I remember not knowing at the time there had been a speakeasy there. And I said to the owner, I said, this is really heavy residual. There was no intelligence there. No one was reaching out to me to try to communicate with me. There were no intelligent thoughts coming through to me, but I felt anger, sadness, happiness. I could tell that it was kind of swirly, like there was a fighting going on at some point. All of that activity that took place, and then I obviously found out it was a speakeasy previously, but all of that energy that took place there, it was there. It was stamped into it. It was there because all of those emotions had gone on in that one place for a long, long time. And so residual energy can be a sound. It can be a movement. A door can physically open and close. It doesn't mean there's anything intelligent there. Or it can be a feeling. So you're right. To your point, you are 100% right, Todd. Residual is much, much more than people think it is, especially with the experiences that you and I have had with it over the years. Much, much more.
It could also be, I just want to also say that it could be something visual. I've heard of residual hauntings where you'll see a pair of legs walking upstairs or whatever. There's nothing intelligent about it, but it's just walking. Again, as you said earlier, with the person who was in the pub, working their thing every day, it just was something that was left behind for whatever reason.
Sure, exactly. And that's a great example, too, because, yes, a lot of people think that if they see a spirit, that spirit is an intelligent spirit, that spirit knows you and knows you're there and can interact with you. Not always the case. Spirits can appear in the form of residual energy. It does happen. So a lot of people tend to assume that that's an intelligent spirit, but it's really not. And I remember you and I talked about this, I think in this past year, maybe on one of the shows, but I thought it was great that Amy and Adam from Kindred Spirits basically differentiated a ghost from a spirit. Because a lot of people call spirits ghost spirits. It's interchangeable. But their thought process was great. Spirits are intelligent energy. Ghosts are more in the realm of residual energy or energy that is not able to tell that you're there. They don't know you're there. They're going about their everyday business without realizing that you're there. And I thought that was a really cool way to differentiate between the two because we interchange them so much, but really they are two different things, just like residual and intelligent.
All right, let's talk about intelligent now that we're here.
Yes.
This is the one that when you go ghost hunting, when you go doing a paranormal investigation, I mean, let's be honest, this is what we really want to see, right?
Right.
We want to have interaction with that spirit, with that energy. And that could be in the form of seeing it, the energy moving something, the energy speaking to us through a spirit box or another piece of equipment.
Right.
Could be something where it's actually audible. It could be an EVP, whatever that is, to have interaction where you ask a question, for instance, and you get a response back. That would be an intelligent type of haunting.
They know you're there. You know they're there. And they're trying to acknowledge you and tell you something maybe. They are aware of your presence. You have a lot of, we'll use the term ghosts who go about their daily, maybe grandma lived in this home for 40 years and grandma, after she passed away, you see your grandma, but when you say grandma or you try to communicate with her, she doesn't recognize you. She doesn't acknowledge you. That's more on the ghost side. That's more, she's going on about what she's doing. It's not an intelligent type of energy or haunting. Then you've got the ones who are highly intelligent. And whether they want to talk to you or not, they want to communicate. Some don't. Some don't want you around. I'm going to give an example of one. It happened in August. We were at a tavern in New York State, and this tavern was extremely old. It was from the early 1800s. It had gone through many, many different changes over the years. And the safe for the money was in the basement area. And the girls who would go down there, the bartenders, even the owner, he would go down, and he had an experience down there too. But the girls always felt like they were being watched. They felt a little bit threatened. That might be a little too strong of a term, but to them, they felt threatened. You go down the stairs, and the cellar was very, very long and not that wide. So it was more long than wide. And at the end of the basement was this old iron safe. And the girls had to go down at the end of the night and put it in there. And they would always feel very uneasy the closer to the back of the room that they got. And there was some storage back there. There were some shelves. They would keep jars of things. And there was an old wooden door in the far back right by the safe. And we were downstairs. And I just remember thinking, don't open that door. Don't open that door. Don't open that door. And the other members of the team opened the door. And not long after that, things started to get a little crazy. And long story short, at one point, I felt like I was either shoved from behind, or this male spirit that I had picked up on, he had literally gone through me. I've never had a spirit go through me before, so I'm assuming that if that was the case, then this was what it was, because it certainly felt that way. He was very strong. And to sum up the entire evening, we were down there twice. The first time we were down there at the beginning of the evening, we had heavy knocking, and we had something be thrown against a wall. Now, none of us saw this object being thrown, but we looked around after the fact, and I found a plastic jar on the floor right where the sound came from on the wall. And I picked it up, and it was a Sweet Baby Ray's jar of barbecue sauce. And there was a shelf there, and I looked at the shelf, and I couldn't find any other jars of this. I had no idea where it came from, but I assumed it had been over there. Maybe it fell off the shelf. Nothing else. So I picked it up. I put it on the shelf, because at the time, we weren't 100% sure that something had been thrown. Went upstairs, and by the way, there was heavy EMF down there from all of the electricity and stuff. So my first thought was it kind of created a fear cage down there, and that might explain a lot of the paranoia of the girls. Even though they didn't spend much time down there, it did. My assumption is it probably contributed a little bit to what was going on. That was my assumption in the beginning of the first time down there. After I found the thing on the floor, put it on the shelf, I thought, well, maybe something more is going on. As we were walking out, I happened to look to the right, and there was a cardboard box with 11 jars of the barbecue sauce, one missing. It was on the other side of the room. So now we're thinking to ourselves, did something throw that jar across the room, right? So one missing, the missing one across the room over on the shelf. We go upstairs. We investigate the rest of the tavern. Had some cool stuff happen up there too. Come back down at the end of the night, and we had someone go under the spirit box. They did the Estes method. They put their headphones on and said out loud the things that were coming through. Dave had the Tempest that's like the Ovilus. We'll talk about that in equipment next week. And the person under the headphones suddenly said, "Go." And there were it's important to say there were a lot of things coming out of the spirit box that were negative type things, like that kind of basically making us feel like we weren't welcome, And just as he said go, Dave's Tempest said, "Please leave." And I remember turning around and saying to Dave, "Did that just say please leave?" Because it was like go, and I said, "Why?" And then it said, "Please leave." And then we heard a tremendous bang behind us. Everybody was accounted for. There was nobody rogue in the area. We hunted around, and sure enough, there was a Sweet Baby Ray's container. The original one was on the shelf where I left it. And that Sweet Baby Ray's was thrown against the door that I said, "Don't open." Okay. Next thing we know, we look in the cardboard box where there were 11 jars of barbecue sauce. Now there are 10 jars of barbecue sauce. So what essentially happened was this spirit was able to pick up a jar, not once but twice, pick up a jar and throw it with force across a room. And hit the wall the first time, hit the door the second time. And it didn't, I remember calling you, Todd, or we were voice messaging as we were leaving that night and telling you what had happened. And the adrenaline was just insane. And it wasn't until I got home and I thought about it even more that I thought, but that's not all. This spirit, this male energy had to have picked it up twice, moved it, because it was a good ways away from where it actually hit. We looked for it, couldn't find it anywhere, materialized it and threw it very hard against the door. That's an example of intelligence, and that's an example of a spirit that did not want to communicate, did not want us there. My thought is that he is protecting something there. This, like I said, this is a 200-year-old building or space. Something is there somewhere that he feels that he is protecting. That's his job. And so there is no way anybody's going to get back there. And that was an example of a spirit who just did not, he didn't come, in peace and love. He's not dangerous if you don't go near him, but he's very defensive because of what he's protecting. Whatever it happens to be, the safe, I don't know what he's protecting. Something behind that door, I have no idea. But that's an example. So they all don't come with peace and light and love. And it's important, because this is Ghost Hunting 101, it's important to know that if you are going to investigate a location, you always need to be prepared for what could happen. And I will tell you that has never happened to me before. That was incredible. It was a learning experience. Never happened to me before. I don't know if it'll ever happen to me again, but I do know that if it does, I will be prepared more so than I was when it happened this time. So there's a little intelligence for you.
I think, too, sometimes like we say, well, be careful, do this, don't do that. Until you're in those situations and you actually have it happen, you probably don't learn your lesson.
No, because I never in a million years thought something like that would happen. And it wasn't just the items, the objects being thrown and the bangs against the wall. It was feeling either pushed or gone through, whatever that was. I completely lost my balance for a second. I got a little cloudy for a second. It was just like, boom. I mean, these are things that you always have to, I guess one of the things I took away from that was these are the things that you always have to be ready for. And you always have to try and keep your cool, which I did keep my cool. I was very proud of myself because let's just say that the other members of the team weren't keeping their cool quite as much as I did. But, just be prepared for these things. Not everybody is coming to you because they want to be passed on or, they want to be released or they want to give you a message. This gentleman gave us a message loud and clear, but he wasn't being friendly about it.
And just realize, too, when you investigate, sometimes it's like if somebody just walked into your home, right?
Yeah,
you wouldn't want them there. So keep that in mind.
Especially, that's a great point, especially if you are investigating a place that hasn't been investigated before or has very rarely been investigated. Be prepared for that, why are you here? What are you doing here in my home? Those are all things that you have to take into account as well, because I will say this, in my experience, Todd, I would say that a very good portion of the energy that I encounter is residual, but I have also encountered a good portion of intelligent spirits, intelligent energy. Sometimes it's both. Sometimes I've had a few of those moments where I've realized we were investigating an old farmhouse a few years ago. And it was an interesting place because I didn't know this at the time. I didn't know it till after the fact, but it was actually two houses that they put together. And there were two separate forms of energy, one on one side of the house, one on the other. But I remember seeing this woman in my mind's eye from around the late 1800s, just kind of going up and down the stairs and around the walkway upstairs and coming back down. And she was doing the same thing over and over. And so I said, okay, that's residual. But then we sat on the steps and we put the EDI meter that measures all kinds of fluctuations, including vibration. We put that down next to me. And as I saw her coming, we were paying attention to it. And she would literally move out of my way around the stairs. And the EDI was picking up her vibrations. So she knew that I was there, but she was on a time loop as well. So she was both residual and she was intelligent at the same time. It's possible. It's very possible. If this woman for 30 years went up and down the stairs, she was the woman of the house, of the farmhouse, and took care of the children in the house. And while the husband was, out in the fields, and she did the same thing every day, all day, that would be a residual stamp. But she most certainly knew that I was there because she was coming down the stairs and purposely moving to avoid me. So it's always possible to have both. A lot of stuff that you have to learn just with experience. These are all things that come with the experience. So,
all right, let's talk about another haunting. And it's one that if you're a movie fan, you probably know about, but you were taught incorrectly through the movie. And that is poltergeist.
Right.
Hollywood says it means noisy ghost, but the actual term is rumble ghost, which I guess is the same thing.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Hollywood made it out to be about like a poltergeist is something evil and or it could be inhuman, demonic, that type of thing. And the truth of the matter is poltergeist is not that at all.
Right.
It actually needs human energy to make it happen.
Right. Right. Poltergeists tend to, the research shows that poltergeists seem to be in environments where there's a lot of emotional turmoil.
Chaos.
That's great. Emotional chaos. And who better to have emotional chaos than a lot of times prepubescent and teenagers, because especially females, because they have a lot of that emotional, their hormones are changing, everything's changing in the world. And so they find that they're around, that these females, these teenage females, are the center of a lot of this poltergeist activity. Not always. Sometimes it can just be through emotional chaos at any age, anyone. But primarily, they tend to tie it to prepubescent and teenage girls.
So a poltergeist must have a human agent involved in order for it to take place.
Right.
And I think it's kind of interesting because any way you look at it, whether you're looking at intelligent or you're looking at residual or even poltergeist, my question is, like, how much of our energy feeds all this stuff happening around us?
Right.
Not to the point where we're haunting ourselves, but how much of our energy and what we're putting out allows us to experience these things. So are we really a human agent, even in residual, even in intelligent? How much of us basically not necessarily creates, but allows that to come through? I'm always kind of interested about that. You talked about intelligence. We talk about TV shows, Ghost Hunters. One of the most incredible, intelligent haunts I've ever experienced on that TV show was when they went to a place called Mount. Let me just double check this here so I get it right. What was it called? It's in New Hampshire. Mount Washington.
Mount Washington. I was just going to say that. Yep.
And they're investigating a room in this big, huge place. And they called it the Princess Room because there was a very well-to-do female that stayed in that room and her bed was still in that room, et cetera, et cetera. So there was a lot of thought process that maybe there was some residual haunting there. But they did an EVP session. And from the human side, they were asking things like, Princess, are you here? Princess, can you hear us? And not hearing anything in response, but when they played it back to the question of, Princess, are you here? It sounds like an old record or an old radio that says, of course I'm here. Where are you? So she heard them, but did not see them in the room.
Right.
It was, I've never heard a response that was just absolutely incredible like that. In fact, I think the episode was called The Princess and the EVP, which is kind of funny.
That's
because
great.
Princess
That's
and the P,
great.
obviously, somebody was thinking when they named that one. But again, there were other investigators in that room who were asking very similar questions who did not get response. But Jay and Grant, I'm a firm believer their energy, whether alone or together, allowed a lot of that stuff to come through.
I think that's a big difference between the so-called spectrum of skeptics and quote unquote believers. I think that people who are 100% skeptical, who don't open themselves up to the possibility, aren't going to experience things.
Yeah.
Because they aren't going to allow themselves to be open to that. And then you have the other spectrum, of course, the believers who will believe anything, no matter what it is. And I don't subscribe to either side of that. I'm probably on the scale. I tend to be pretty skeptical about most things. I have to debunk them. But I do think that if you allow yourself to open up, Todd, allow yourself to believe that, yes, there could be things that we just don't understand. I think your energy is definitely a catalyst for these things happening, for experiences to come forth. Does it mean just go in like willy-nilly crazy and, no, it does not. It means protect yourself. It means be careful. It means be intellectual about it. Be intentional about what you do when you deal with those in the other in the paranormal world. But I agree with you. I do think that our own energy can spark a lot of the experiences that we have. And last week when we talked about going in and being respectful, believe it or not, just like respect goes a long way in the living world, respect incredibly helps in the paranormal world. And it will get you much farther than it would if you provoke or go in with your arms crossed and you're just not going to believe anything that happens. You know, it's like, show me. Well, you show me that this doesn't exist, right? And that's one reason why I'm really proud of Dave, because Dave wasn't one of those people. He didn't really know what to believe, but since he's opened himself up to the possibilities more, he's experienced so many more things than he ever thought. And, it's just a matter of using your energy for good and using your energy to allow something to happen. But that brings up, not to get off on a tangent, we can talk about this at some other point too, but that brings me to the idea of, are there parallel worlds?
Right.
So how is it, was the veil thin in that one particular place? How was it that she couldn't see them, but she could hear them? Was there a time slip of some sort? There's so many things we just don't understand. And science is only as smart as we are as human beings, right? We're the ones that are discovering science. We're the ones who are advancing science. It's only as intelligent as we are. There are plenty of things in this world that science hasn't caught up to yet. Because if science had caught up to everything in this world, then we wouldn't need to advance science, correct? So we don't know everything. You can't 100% go by the science all the time. You can use the science that we have to help you, but you cannot go by the science that we have 100% of the time. You have to go by your instincts, your beliefs, your experiences. And, there's been plenty of things that have happened to me that the equipment didn't pick up, but I still know that they were my own experiences and I can't explain them. So, and on one note, as far as residual, when we were up in Saranac Lake, New York, back in November, we stayed in an old cure cottage. Saranac Lake was very well known throughout the world for its tuberculosis sanitariums, especially Trudeau, and the entire town was essentially made up of cure cottages where people with tuberculosis could go and get the cure. And so we stayed in an old one, and we actually did some EVP sessions and used a few other pieces of equipment. And I listened to the audio recently, and I sent you this one, I'm pretty sure. And we actually heard women singing, and we heard women having conversations on the audio that weren't there, weren't even in the area when we were recording those nights. And we also got some intelligent responses as well. And so, you can most certainly get residual sounds and voices on recorders when you do EVP sessions too. So just something to keep in mind for further reference. So yeah, ghost hunting it's always been my idea that for me, paranormal investigating, I do it, and there's no wrong answer here. I do it because I want to learn. Because at almost 53 years old, I feel like I don't know anywhere near what I want to know about life or death. And so I do it to learn. And I also do it to help both the living and the dead. And I like to think that I have. I like to think that the abilities that I have been given, now that I have learned about them and accepted them, and they've leveled up, I like to think that I'm helping people. And so that's why I do it.
I want to bring up one more haunting, if you will,
Yes.
that we haven't talked about, and that would be Inhuman. And again, I think Hollywood has us thinking that all inhuman situations are evil, but that's not necessarily true. If you look at textbooks and you look up Inhuman hauntings, they talk about things like angelic, animal, elemental hauntings.
Right.
And we don't necessarily get so much into Inhuman here in America, or especially elementals, but we are hearing more about them. The natives definitely have a belief in elementals and things of that nature, as do people in the old world, meaning like England and Ireland and things like that. The UK, it's very big over there. Europeans, fairies, elves, brownies, leprechauns, gnomes, pixies, banshees. These all have a place in the paranormal world in other parts of the country. And we're starting to deal with them more here in America as well. You are hearing more about elementals and how they are tied into nature. So I did want to throw that out there because it's not something that we necessarily see a lot on the TV shows about.
Right.
But there was an episode of Ghost Hunters where they did go to, I think they went to Ireland, and they actually ran into some elementals there.
Yes.
So,
non-human, just from what I understand, I've never come across anything in the traditional sense of non-human. Demonic activity, the demonic is incredibly rare. It's incredibly rare.
And you would know it's demonic. We're not talking about a couple of scratches. We're not talking about something flying across the room.
Exactly. That's a very rare thing. As much as they'd like you to believe that it can happen a lot, it's a very rare thing. Maybe we could do like a little mini bonus episode on some of the more inhuman type of spirits, fairies, pixie, all of them. And over, especially in the UK, they are a huge part of not only their folklore, but in their true belief system. So maybe we could do a little bit more. I thought that was cool that you hit on that, though, Todd, the animal one, because a lot of people believe that animal spirits, you know, your pet who you loved more than anything passes on. And are they still with you? And my answer is yes. I do believe that they are still with you. So I thought that was a really cool one. But it's just important to understand that non-human doesn't necessarily mean the demonic. Non-human can mean other things as well. So I would suggest, like I'm starting to look into those a little bit more. I think it's pretty interesting. I would suggest kind of just doing your own little research on it. And again, like you said, the Native Americans really believed in those kinds of things. And so it wouldn't be unusual on Native land to come across something like that. They're not all the white lady in the long dress. There are other things that do come into our realm. And with that being said, we should talk really briefly about protection, making sure that you're protecting yourself. Before I do any investigation, I always do an opening prayer and a closing prayer. It's not religious specific. You don't have to be religion specific. But I say an opening prayer and a closing prayer just to make sure that everything's okay. A lot of people carry crystals with them. I do. I carry black tourmaline, quartz, clear quartz. You can do rose quartz. Black obsidian is good for protection. Selenite is good for protection. Hematite is good for protection. Any of those are good to carry with you. My friend Sudi actually sent me a protection pouch that had a bunch of different crystals and protection items in it. So I carry that with me on every investigation that I do. It's really important to set intention when you go in, and be confident in yourself. You know, don't go in mousy. Go in and be confident in yourself, not cocky, confident, and Set your intentions when you go and set your intentions when you leave. Set your boundaries. You're not allowed to do this. You can do this. You can approach me like this. I will help you if I can. All kinds of, you're not allowed to follow me home. Those are all good intentions that you should be setting to protect yourself in situations like paranormal investigations.
So the information we shared with you today is not exclusive or all that extensive. Lots of more information out there. If you've heard something today that interests you, look it up online, get more details. Reach out to us. We'll look up more details for you as well.
Yeah, right. And reach out to us with questions, comments. Do you like the direction we're going in this season? Do you not? Do you have any stories yourself of experiences that you had? Maybe you hear noises in your home and you're not really sure what's going on. Let us know. Maybe we can help you out.
All right. Well, season 11, episode 2, I think is wrapped up.
And it's a wrap.
Next week, we're going to talk about equipment. Be thinking. Here's a little homework for next week. Be thinking. If you know something about the equipment that's used for investigations, what would your top 3 pieces of equipment be that you would bring with you to investigate? And Todd and I will give ours next week, and we'll see if they all match. All right. That sounds good. Thanks for sharing your day with us and a little time with us talking about different types of haunting. We'll continue on with the Ghost Hunting 101 series this season, season 11, with the Sandy and Toddcast.